It's time for Word on the Street, where we check in with our panelists, find out what stories they are watching. Rick, of course, is watching the Republican National Convention. Last night, we heard from White House economic advisor Larry Kudlow on how he characterized the economy right now.
There's a housing boom, there's an auto boom, a manufacturing boom, a consumer spending boom. Stocks are in record territory. A V-shaped recovery is pointing to better than 20% growth in the second half of this year.
Oh, Rick, I assume that you have some thoughts on this characterization.
The economy is just doing amazing, isn't it? I mean, we've got these 5 booms going all at once: stocks, housing, consumer spending, autos, and manufacturing, except only one of them is really a boom. 3 others are nowhere near a boom. It's almost the opposite story. And one is kind of a partial boom. So stocks, yes, there's a boom in stocks. We've been talking about that for the last 3 months. Stocks largely propped up by Federal Reserve monetary stimulus, can't deny it. But not everybody owns stocks. Housing, there is a boom in terms of sales. Sales have been hitting record highs. But the problem there is that as sales go up, the demand for new houses is actually pushing prices up, and housing affordability is getting worse, not better. So there's a boom if you're a seller in the housing market, but there's not a boom if you're a buyer. And then for the other 3, auto sales, manufacturing, employment, and consumer spending, the story here is essentially the same. If you look at the charts on these things during, let's say, just the last 3 to 4 months, you're going to see, wow, look at those massive increases in May, June, and July. However, if you look at those things compared with February, right before we had the explosion of the coronavirus pandemic and all the business shutdowns, we're still way below where we used to be. And it's not clear we're going to keep shooting up and get back to normal anytime soon. In fact, most economists think we're not going to get back to normal. We're not going to reattain those levels of auto sales, employment, and spending until we have a coronavirus vaccine, because we cannot just open businesses fully until we get there. And that is, we'll be lucky if we get that in 2021. So Kudlow and his boss, Donald Trump, they need to convince voters the economy is really doing great. I'm just not sure voters are going to agree with them.
Well, and the other thing, as I pointed out earlier, if you're saying the economy is great, then how do you push for stimulus? How do you argue that a stimulus is needed if everything's already okay?
Well, logically, you don't. But I mean, the Trump White House is not known for its logical approach to problems. And I think they have another problem. You cannot persuade voters that they're better off if they're not better off. You just cannot tell people, no, things are really better than you think they are. You might be unemployed or underemployed, or you might have lost health insurance, but look at the data. Look at the V-shaped recovery in auto sales. Don't you see it? Obama tried to do this in 2014 during the midterm elections. He kept pointing to economic data, numbers and statistics and charts and graphs that showed the economy was really doing well, and voters didn't buy it. And that was the year the Democrats took what Obama described as a shellacking in the midterm elections, and Republicans gained a lot of seats in Congress. So that's a warning sign for Trump. You cannot persuade voters they're better off if they know otherwise.
When you think about the efficacy of someone like Melania Trump speaking yesterday, there was a lot of chatter, even among kind of folks who are undecided, that she actually showed empathy. She did talk about the coronavirus in a way that perhaps other folks and other speakers have not addressed. Do you feel like that was effective? Her talking about her personal story, kind of pivoting here and talking about the emotional side of things rather than the economics?
I feel like it's irrelevant. Yes, it was notable in its way because one person, it was the first person in 2 nights of the Republican convention that actually did talk about victims of this coronavirus. But Melania Trump is probably going to be silent for the next 10 weeks, and we're probably not going to see her again. And for the most part, she's just speaking to the converts. One of the big questions about these conventions is, will they reach anybody beyond people who are already determined to vote Democrat or determined to vote Republican? We've actually seen viewership numbers down from 2016, not surprisingly, because of the weird format of the conventions. And Republican viewership apparently is lower than Democratic viewership last week. I just want to go back to one other thing, Melody, since we started out by talking about Larry Kudlow. He referred to the coronavirus pandemic in the past tense. he said it was terrible. And in some other ways, he said, you know, there were some heartbreaking moments, as if it's all over, and we're now past it. And I think out in America, we're not. People know that. So I just don't know if this approach is going to work.